IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, this is Sachin Kalbag from Takshashila. Welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. On November 29th, the United States Justice Department filed an indictment against an Indian national for his alleged involvement in a foiled assassination plot of a US-based leader of a Sikh separatist movement who is also a citizen of New York. Now, it does not explicitly name the separatist leader, but it is believed to be Gurpatwant Singh Pannun. He is the counsel and the founder of Sikhs for Justice, which the Indian government says is a Khalistani separatist organization. He, along with Nijjar, who was assassinated or killed in Canada earlier this year, were all part of the separatist movement known as the Khalistani movement. And once that was done, the US Justice Department has claimed that the Indian government, or rather one Indian government employee, which it has named as CC1, who was not identified in the indictment filed in the federal court in Manhattan, recruited an Indian national named Nikhil Gupta to hire a hitman to carry out the assassination. Now, this assassination plot was foiled by US authorities, according to the prosecutors. Now, Gupta is currently in custody and has been charged with murder for hire, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison. Czech authorities had arrested and detained Gupta on June 30th this year, pursuant to the bilateral extradition treaty between the US and the Czech Republic. Now, in its indictment, the Justice Department has claimed that earlier this year, an Indian government employee working together with others, including Gupta, directed a plot to assassinate the political activist who's a US citizen of Indian origin in New York City. So it's gone on forever now, but it happened a long time back, but it's only now, on November 30th, that the Department of Justice filed an indictment. Now, on the matter, the Assistant Attorney General Matthew J. Olson in the US was quoted as saying that the dedicated law enforcement agents and prosecutors in this case foiled and exposed a dangerous plot to assassinate a US citizen. Now, I want to take us back to September, when Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had alleged that India was officially responsible for the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey in Canada. And since then, India and Canada are on a diplomatic war path, although things have cooled down a little now, but still the conditions are not the same as they were prior to September when Trudeau made the statement. Now, in today's episode, I have with me Yusuf Unjhawala, my colleague at Takshashila. He's a scholar in US India relations and on foreign policy and on strategic issues. I want to ask him a few questions related to this, because this is what is perhaps going to be the most dominating topic of discussion when it comes to US-India ties in the next 6 months or so. I want to look at 3 or 4 different issues related to this. One, of course, is the impact on India-US ties. How different was the US approach from what Canada did after it alleged that India was involved in the assassination of one of its Canadian citizens? Who's likely to have done it? What India is likely to do now? Does this really impact US-India relationships at all, given that Prime Minister Narendra Modi had gone to the US in June and signed very many strategic agreements on which we had done a previous episode? Yusuf, thank you so much for joining. Welcome to another episode of All Things Policy.
Thanks, Sachin. Great to be back again.
Thank you. The first question is a very obvious one, Yusuf. What will this incident, or rather, how will this incident have an impact on US-India ties? Do you think in the short term it's likely to have anything, or do you think there will be some impact in the long term?
I think, Sachin, there is not going to be an impact on the strategic ties, the comprehensive global strategic ties that India and US have. We've already seen some certain statements from the US. In fact, the deputy national security advisor in India today, and there was a meeting with our deputy national security advisor, and they were talking about the ISET program and taking stock of situation and how to further expand take India-US relations to greater heights in various domains of cooperation, and which is including technology and defense. Um, they may have spoken about the ongoing case, but the stress was on our strategic ties and our cooperation. If you also look at the statements in the US, excuse in the US, uh, once there was a leak in the media, I think it was Financial Times, and they said, we have spoken with India about it. We are very serious about this. The Indians expressed surprise at this information, and they have agreed to look into the matter very seriously. This is what did it. Kind of, you know, very level-headed, playing it cool till further information is available. Obviously, they have a lot of information they have shared with India because this happened sometime in June earlier this year, and a lot has happened since then. This incident probably happened around the time Prime Minister Modi was in the US, where he addressed the US Congress. There was a state dinner, many agreements signed, as you rightly said. After that, President Biden visited India for the G20 summit. There very recently has been a 2+2 summit between India and the US, where the foreign minister and the defense minister of both countries interacted. And again, there was a long statement issued to further our ties. So I think they are separating the two. No country wants, any external force, whatever kind of force, to kill a citizen on their soil. But I think the both the countries are handling this very maturely. They don't want any damage to the ties by any kind of statements which are unwarranted. And I think both are sensitive to each other's concerns. India has set up a committee to look into this matter, which is headed by India's national security advisor, no less, which shows India's seriousness in getting to the bottom of the concerns which the US has shared. India has taken this as inputs shared by the US on security issues, and we'll discuss this further as to what these can be. But overall, I don't think there's going to be any impact on India-US ties broadly, because we have expanding commercial interest, economic interest, we have expanding defense interest, and we have and we have shared concerns in the Indo-Pacific region, and obviously the China factor looms very much over there.
In fact, that was going to be the next point that I wanted to raise, because there are a couple of things that I thought should should be brought to the front. One is, this relationship is too big to fail. Uh, the US and India relationship, which is possibly one of the most important strategic relationships of the 21st century, is too big to fail. One. Two is, as you pointed out, India and the US have China as a shared concern for various reasons, but there are some commonalities as well. India, because of the border issues, India, because it's dependent heavily on semiconductors from China. The US is trying to strangulate China's dominance in this particular market, and using all kinds of pressure tactics, including new laws in the US to figure out, rather to control China's upcoming dominance in the field of AI, in the field of semiconductors, and everything related to that. So in that situation, perhaps when realpolitik kind of demands that you look at India as a long-term strategic partner, which is why perhaps the formulation of the committee is an important step from India, from two perspectives. One, the optics of it, and two, to show the world that India is very, very serious about this allegation.
Mm-hmm. Of course, you're right. I mean, the India-US ties, we've called it the most indispensable partnership of this century, the most consequential partners of these centuries. There are many differences between the two countries on various issues. I mean, one of them is, say, the war in Ukraine. But there are such many broad convergences, and there is so much to work together for our common objectives, including the development of our two countries. I mean, the US also sees India as a large market. India sees US as a source for capital, for technology. So there is a lot working for this relationship. Both sides don't want anything that pulls the relationship backwards, because we worked very hard towards this relationship. I mean, we have a whole history of distrust between both the countries. So a lot has happened. A lot of work has gone on to create the trust between the two countries, where today they can practically speak on any topic, including topics which are uncomfortable. So this is what is happening right now. There is an issue. The US has raised concerns, and India is serious about addressing those concerns, which is why it has set up the committee. So also, we don't want. I mean, most of the commentary that we hear is, because the China factor is so large. No, this is what is driving the relationship. As we have discussed in one of our earlier podcasts, I mean, if the whole relationship is just boils is kind of narrowed down to cooperation over China, then we're going to have a problem, because that relationship is going to be very narrowly focused, and things can then kind of go downhill. But that is not the case. The India-US relationship is much more broadly based, addressing various issues. I mean, for our common good, for our prosperity, and this is the contribution which is especially for India, which is looking for to develop its we have set a goal of developing our country, becoming a developed country by 2047, and the US is a major contributor. Is going to be a major contributor to that.
I want to quote a couple of think tank experts from Washington, D.C., who spoke on this issue recently. Derek Grossman, for instance, who's a Indo-Pacific analyst at Rand Corporation, he said India has virtually nothing to worry about after the explosive news. Reality is that DC needs New Delhi more than the other way around. And he said it's Biden's Indo-Pacific strategy to counter China is an important one, and he thinks that India is needed by Washington more than the other way around. But the US leeways in unlimited and more bad behavior could chip away at recent gains, he said. So Lisa Curtis, who is the director of the Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, said that India needs to cooperate with the US on this issue, and immediately with the US to address this shocking development. So there are these views that are coming from Washington, which are looking at the reality of the relationship. Something that you've also pointed out, that this relationship is far too important to look at this particular foiled assassination attempt as a hindrance to a long-term partnership between the two countries. But this brings me to another question, is that the difference between the approach that India took as regards the American allegation from what Canada said. Justin Trudeau in Canada said that India was responsible for the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. The Justice Department on November 30th, 2019, he filed the indictment saying that India, or rather one Indian national, is responsible for the foiled assassination attempt. But however, the kind of aggressive attitude or the aggressive response that India had to Canada is completely in contrast with the response that India had to the US. So one question that arises in anybody's mind is, one, why there is this difference between the two approaches, and two, shouldn't both relationships be equally important, given that a large part of the Canadian and the American diaspora are Indian origin people?
I think Justin Trudeau, for whatever reasons, did not take the right approach. The US did. He went to the parliament and said Indian government is involved. He has not put forward, or even their investigating agencies have not put forward any evidence. There is no charge sheet or indictment like the US has put up. All they have been saying is that we want India to cooperate. While India said, well, put forward the details and we'll look into it. It's not that India has said, no, we'll not. I mean, look at the case with the US. The US has come up with a charge sheet. India set up a committee to look into it. But when you look at Canada, they have not done anything. And also our history with Canada, especially with this issue of Khalistani terrorism goes back a long way. You know, in 1985, there was the Kanishka bombing. Canada has sheltered Khalistanis over the decades. They are allowed, they say it's free speech, but very recently there was a rally in which they kind of glorified the assassination of India's Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. I mean, this is not going to go down well in India. It didn't. India reacted very sharply, and the Canadians have failed to take into concern India's concerns into account. So there is a bit of history behind that. And then this allegation was put up by Justin Trudeau. Obviously, India reacted very sharply to that because the Canadians haven't put up any evidence so far. I mean, I remember reading a report, I think it was in Washington Post, where they said they had access the surveillance footage, and they came up with what they saw, and then also they said the Canadian police at up to that point, I don't know what's the latest report over there, but up to that point had failed to even question or kind of interview people in that area where the murder happened. So what does it say? I mean, they just came up with this allegation. But contrast this with the US, where it's gone ahead. It has, collected a lot of evidence in terms of, messages, screenshots, videos, and they have a name. They have an arrest. They have arrested someone. They have information that there was this alleged Indian government employee, probably with a CRPF background, who was one who was guiding or rather directing this operation. So obviously the US has been methodical. They have taken the judicial route versus Justin Trudeau, who made it a big political thing by going to Parliament and just directly pointing at the Indian government. The US government has said an employee of Indian government has done this, is not accused the Indian government of doing it, and that is left open, doors for any solution as India investigates and sees who's responsible, who's not. Is there any kind of a political clearance at any level, which surely is not there because India said this is not Indian government policy. So we'll have to wait as to what the investigation reveals.
Stay tuned to All Things Policy. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
Also, Justin Trudeau perhaps has some pressure because of domestic politics. The Sikh population in Canada constitutes a huge number of votes for the different parties out there, and Justin Trudeau's party being one of the parties that are appealing, that is appealing to the Sikh votes. Perhaps that also played a major role in Trudeau making that statement in Parliament rather than going and doing what the Americans did, which is go through the judicial route. The other reason is, of course, that Merrick Garland, who is the Attorney General in the United States, equivalent to the Law Minister in India, went ahead and investigated the claims, investigated the alleged plot, and went exactly by the book, so that there is no diplomatic impact on the relationship between the US and India. And those approaches are really, those two approaches are really the key differences due to which India's supported or rather responded positively to the American allegation versus the Canadian allegation. In fact, just to add to what you said about Canada, quote unquote, sheltering separatists and in the name of free speech. In fact, some of the Khalistani pro-Khalistani marches that happened in Canada, where they threatened to kill Indian diplomats, including the High Commissioner there, Sanjay Verma. And clearly their lives are in danger. And in such a situation, how does the Indian government respond, if not for the aggressive stand that it took against the Canadian government?
if I may add, not only the our diplomats over there, not only the High Commissioner, but I remember that they also painted targets on our PM and External Affairs Minister. So that has also happened.
Yeah, and also they said that people in Canada should boycott Air India, and they told Sikhs not to fly Air India on November 19th, which is symbolic because November 19th is the birth anniversary of Indira Gandhi, the former prime minister, and while she was held responsible for Operation Blue Star, the thing is that this was the rallying point for the Khalistani separatist movement in Canada, and they wanted the same to happen in America as well, where they did not get much support. But this is exactly what the Indian government is trying to highlight in international forums, that Canada is supporting, or rather implicitly not supporting by not saying anything or not doing anything against separatist activities on their soil. So, I mean, we can talk about a lot on the difference between the two approaches. But the question then arises, Yusuf, who likely did this? Indian government, some would say, has a strategic interest in killing or rather eliminating, Khalistani separatists, including those who are at leadership positions, which Gurpatwant Singh Pannun is. And in such a situation, of course, having a committee to inquire that is perhaps a good first step, which is exactly what Secretary of State Antony Blinken said when he was asked about this. But the other thing is that the other question is, why would someone else try to kill Pannun, or why would somebody else kill Nijjar in Canada? And these are questions that the cynics, will point out, no matter how the Indian government responds.
Sure, Sachin. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, there are only two possibilities, right? That the Indian government authorized this, and B, the Indian government didn't authorize this. If the Indian government didn't authorize it, there are again two possibilities. It's possible that there are rogue elements within agencies who carried this out, and B, there could be criminal networks in India, trans border networks where they have nexus over here and Canada and the US, and they would have some kind of their own reasons to carry out the killing. This is what a lot of a commentary has happened on the Nijjar killing, where they've said that this could be a gang rivalry and a killing thereof. Yeah, I mean, we discussed this in our earlier conversation, where this could have been the Nijjar killing would have been a kind of a gang war. There was the Malik killing a few months earlier in Canada, and Malik was seen to be pro BJP, or rather kind of made a deal with India, and he was then fell out with the Khalistanis over there. So they could have some kind of gang rivalry would have led to that. So these are the two options. So the two things: Indian government at the highest level sanctioned this, which I really doubt. But okay, but again, you would think that is one possibility. Second, Indian government did not authorize this, but there could be rogue elements within it at one level, and the other one is transnational crime syndicates who carried this out. Now I would like to if you look at the indictment. I can't wrap my head around it, thinking that any professional intelligence agency would have conducted this operation. It looks also cavalier. I mean, this Nikhil Gupta has gone to town talking about taking Khalistanis out in Canada, in the US. We have 3 or 4 on our hit list, and this guy was number 4, and down the list and things like that. And in one of the instances said that they were sitting in a conference room, and he turned the camera around to show 3 other people who were in suit in this conference. Whoever does that, I mean, does this sound like a professional intelligence agency, namely RAW, who would have done this? It sounds so amateurish, so sound, it looks like
Also, the fact that they could not recognize a DEA agent, right? I mean, Drug Enforcement Agency agent.
Not only that, so what are the chances that the middleman, who is named as CS, being a DA informant and a hitman being an undercover agent. I mean, how horribly wrong, can you get if you're a professional intelligence agency, if you would actually looking to conduct a hit on foreign soil? It doesn't add up to, I mean, I would be very, very seriously concerned if this was a raw operation. I mean, you need to disband raw for all I can. It's so amateurish. If this is raw, and we should be, our serious concern should not be the hit that took place or alleged hit, plot that happened in the US. It should be the amateurishness of this whole operation. You have to be seriously concerned what kind of talent that raw has if this was a raw operation.
But one step that the Indian government promptly took, and I think it's very admirable, is the fact that it set up an inquiry committee led by the National Security Advisor. So the Indian government is taking it very, very seriously. But what are the likely next steps for the US-India strategic relationship? Will this ever be brought up? Because these are questions that are coming up consistently at press conferences. Even when Blinken was giving a press conference on the Israel-Hamas war, a journalist stood up and asked him about the foiled assassination attempt. So clearly, this is not going to go away soon. Journalists will be going after it. There will be investigative reporters who will be behind this story for quite some time now. So in that sense, the officials in the U.S. government as well, whether it's the White House or the National Security Agency or the CIA or the State Department, will have to answer questions from journalists regarding this particular thing. So, given that a DEA agent was also approached by Nikhil Gupta, shows that the entrenched nature of DEA agents are not necessarily spies, but they are undercover agents. So in that sense, they are there everywhere. And the fact that we could not, one, recognize them, two, we did not even have plausible deniability in this in terms of or rather immediate plausible deniability in this. So I mean, like you said, it looks a little amateur. I mean, not little, but a lot amateurish for an intelligence agency like RNAW to do this. But on the other hand, will this be an awkward pause when it comes to discussions between the two countries?
No. I mean, look at it. As I said earlier, you have the deputy NSA over here discussing whole gamut of relationship, the technological cooperation between the two countries. Obviously, it's a very serious matter for the US, and India acknowledges that and has set up the committee. So, what are the outcomes? Obviously, it's not the journalists that who are going to follow up on this. I mean, you have a legal case now. I mean, there is a person who has been arrested. As they say, the law will take its own course, and things will come out as they investigate, as the case progresses. So, we cannot wish this case away. That is one. So India will also conduct this investigation. Perhaps the Indian government already knows who this CC1 is, if at all, and they would know that his antecedents. In my opinion, under no circumstances will Indian government say that we did it. They've already denied it. It's not the government of India policy. So, like I said, the only two options. If the Indian government did not do it, then either someone in the agency has gone rogue, or there are crime network syndicates who would have done this. Even if there is this rogue element, then India would say, we have found who this guy is. It is not something that the political leadership has authorized, and this may be a rogue operation. I mean, we are just trying to see the options. We're not trying to prejudge the case, but these are the options or possibilities which are there, which can be considered.
Yeah, I will just recall what Michael Kugelman, the South Asia director at the Wilson Center, said. One of the quotes that he gave immediately after the indictment was that with many or most of the countries, the relationship would be torpedoed, but ample trust strategic consideration loom large when it comes to India. So this leads to free passes that most don't get. So India, has a special place when it comes to American interests in the Indo-Pacific. So it is obviously that that reason that Joe Biden did not bring that up officially when he was here for G20. Nor did he speak about it.
Sachin, over here, if I can just if I can interrupt, there was a plot, but there is no actual killing. I mean, doesn't take the seriousness away if there was a foreign hand in kind of plotting to kill someone in the US, but still there was a plot, but not an actual killing. In 1985, the Taiwanese actually killed a Chinese American, a dissident. I mean, a Taiwanese. At that time it was Republic of China. So Chinese American dissident or author, I think, if I recollect, correctly, who was killed, and the Taiwanese owned up and said, you know what, this was a rogue operation, and they fired the intelligence chief for it. So this has happened, in 1985. And they are allies. The Taiwan-US relation is strong. I mean, they are one of. If the Chinese do anything, the US will come to Taiwan's aid, and that. So that's how close their relationship is. But there was an actual assassination. Here we have a plot. I don't think both countries are going to blow up this relationship based on this plot. I think both countries have understood each other's concern. There is enough room for them to, both legally as well as diplomatically solve this, and so that it does not affect the relationship.
Yes, I remember the case that you pointed out. I think it happened in 1984. Henry Liu was the Chinese American journalist and historian who was killed in the US, and I think the Taiwanese government was. It came out quickly and said it was a rogue operation, and it was not directly involved. But you're absolutely right. I mean, it was. There are precedents to this, and in that case, there was an actual killing. In this case, it was a foiled assassination attempt. But on that note, we are just run out of time. Yusuf, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. I'd love to see what the inquiry committee comes up with and what kind of response India gives in international forums on this foiled attempt. And hopefully the Indian-US relationship treats this perhaps as a speed breaker, just as a small bump, and goes ahead full steam when it comes to a larger
I don't even think we're looking at it as a speed breaker or a bump. I don't think so. That is also happening. I mean, in all likelihood, President Joe Biden is going to be in India for the Republic Day parade. And then there's going to be a Quad summit. I don't think there's going to be a speed breaker. They're going to show very serious concern, which they have. Perhaps if they think that there was any kind of an official sanction to this, it's going to be like, what, we don't appreciate this. We're warning you, don't do this again. That kind of a thing. But it's not going to, because so much has gone into building these ties after strategic distrust of over 50 years, that you don't want to break this up. So I think both sides acknowledge that, and they'll not even, this will not even be a kind of a speed breaker in the ties, because we're going to march ahead. Because any kind of a speed breaker right now will kind of, the speed will be reduced into which the progress of the ties is going on, including our technological cooperation, our defense cooperation. It's not in the interest of both countries. So I don't think they're going to, kind of say, we're going to take some kind of a pause till, you solve this. That is not happening, as we see from today's meeting of the two deputy NSAs.
Absolutely. Also, it is not Biden related, right? Because it's because these relationships are for perpetuity. It's not that Biden and Modi have decided suddenly that it's only between them. It's actually a long-term strategic relationship between two of the world's largest democracies, and countries that share common interests and common concerns. So thank you so much, Yusuf, once again for joining me in this podcast. I had a great time talking to you, Hopefully, we'll meet again in another episode of All Things Policy. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sachin, so much. Great to be on your show.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takstashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.